Last year, Damon Wade came within inches of saving everything. He survived a career-ending injury, rebuilt himself from nothing, battled through a losing season at a program nobody believed in, all while trying to hold his family together from 5 states away. And when the clock struck 12 on his freshman year, he'd lost the most important thing in his life, his home. But that wasn't even the worst part. What he saw standing in that driveway changed everything. After an up and down freshman season, Damon felt more behind than when he'd first returned to football. The only things he knew for certain were that Coach Singleton couldn't be trusted, and that his family, stuck in a cramped apartment, still needed him, now maybe more than ever. Coach Singleton tried to reach out over the offseason, but calls went unanswered, texts went ignored, whatever explanation he had, Damon just wasn't interested in hearing it. Damon knew he couldn't stay in Hattiesburg, the place felt tainted, and the ironic part is, the school closest to home was the same program Singleton had just landed at, which left him with really only one option. For sophomore year, Damon was heading to Cal. Still quite the hike from Encino, but far enough that running into Coach Singleton at the grocery store felt unlikely. Damon arrived in Berkeley, rated a 77 overall, with the same mission he'd always had, the one he failed to achieve a year ago. He'd come so close to saving his childhood home, the one his father had built, but in the end, it just wasn't enough. He used what he had scraped together at Southern Miss to cover rent and groceries for a few months, just something to take the load off his mom. His dad used to say that a man who can't take care of his family can't take care of anything, and Damon had been carrying around those words ever since he was a kid, but he knew he needed more. And now, at Cal, in the ACC, there were more eyes on him, more exposure, more NIL deals to be had. Damon had to make it count. But honestly, there was another reason he chose this program, maybe the biggest reason of all. And that reason was showing up right away, the week 1 matchup. Cal versus UCLA. Damon had circled that game from the moment he stepped foot in Berkeley, and when the day finally came, it felt like the fight of his life. And right before kickoff, Coach Singleton reached out one more time. Damon read it, put his phone down, and hit the tunnel. As he stepped into California Memorial Stadium for the first time, something hit him differently than he expected. This wasn't Hattiesburg anymore. Hell, this wasn't even Encino. He was about to take meaningful snaps in a meaningful game for the first time in what felt like forever. UCLA was opening the year ranked 10th in the nation, without a doubt the hardest test Damon had ever faced. And with Coach Singleton now the offensive coordinator for the Bruins, the weight of the moment wasn't lost on him. Across the sideline stood a man who knew exactly what kind of player he was, what his tendencies were, and who was now in a position to expose them. And from the opening drive, Damon could feel the step up in competition. Players were bigger, stronger, and faster than he was prepared for. On 3rd and 10, he tried to keep pace with the receiver who got behind him, and thankfully the pass rush got home, bringing up 4th down and an early stop for the Golden Bear defense. And the one thing that had been missing at Southern Miss didn't seem to be a problem at Cal. The offense moved the ball, came away with a long field goal, and took an early 3-0 lead. Cal extended the lead, but that's when Damon's biggest weakness began to show itself. His pursuit. Ever since the injury, his lateral mobility hadn't been able to hold up in space at all. Singleton had found something to exploit, and he wasn't going to let up. Another Bruin carry went right up the middle, and Damon couldn't get into position to stop it, and UCLA walked in for the score, cutting the lead to 3. Damon hit the sideline furious, and his new coach didn't say a word to him. He didn't have to. Damon knew what he had done. And when he got back out there, he was determined to make up for it. He read the handoff before the snap, stepped up, and took the back's legs out from under him for a tackle for loss. Then on the very next play, he got his depth and played perfect coverage to disrupt the pass, forcing a change of possession. As he stood on the sideline, going over the series with his coach, Damon couldn't help but glance across the field, where Singleton was staring back and nodding slowly. But out of the break, UCLA came out swinging. Damon couldn't shake the block, and one handoff to the edge went 65 yards into Cal territory. But he wasn't about to make the rest of the day that easy. He stepped up in the box on the next play, shut down the run, and helped the defense hold UCLA to just 3. Damon was finding his footing now, and on the next drive, he snuffed out the quick screen and crashed downhill, holding the receiver to a short gain. With the game knotted at 10 and the third quarter winding down, neither team could pull away. And as the afternoon wore on, Damon's patience wore with it. He'd been hunting one play all game, something to send a message to the man across the sideline. He wanted Singleton to feel it. But when he abandoned his zone, looking for the quick interception, UCLA went deep for an easy walk-in touchdown. Any other season, there would have been someone on the sideline that knew exactly how to reel him back in and to help him find his balance. But that someone was on the other sideline now, and Damon was on his own. Cal reclaimed the lead, and with just a minute to play, UCLA threw a pick right to the Golden Bear defense. Just like that, Cal had upset the 10th ranked team in the country to open the season. To Damon, the victory should have felt like something, like vindication or closure, but it felt like nothing. The anger he'd carried into that stadium was still there. If anything, it had only grown. Because regardless of the outcome, Singleton was going home to his house tonight. Damon looked across the field and saw his former mentor approaching, with the same steady expression he had grown familiar with. But Damon didn't have anything to say to him. He shot him a look, grabbed his helmet, and hit the tunnel without a word. Only when reporters approached asking who deserved credit for the upset did Damon say anything. He kept it brief and shined the light on his new coaching staff. After opening the season with a win over a top 10 program, it didn't take long for the NIL offers to follow. And from the very first one, it was clear this wasn't Hattiesburg anymore. The number of his first deal alone was more than any deal he'd signed last year. But when he called his mom to share the news, it seemed like she didn't really care.
That's great, sweetie. Listen, we need to talk about Mr. Singleton.
But Coach Singleton was the last thing that Damon wanted to discuss. The following week, Cal fell to San Jose State in embarrassing fashion. Damon struggled to keep his head in it all afternoon, but still managed to make enough plays to keep the deals moving forward. And this one in particular was different from anything he'd signed before. He got a car. Look, it wasn't a Lambo or anything, but it had 4 wheels, an AC that worked, and he didn't have to work a drive-thru to get it. So in Damon's book, it was a win. And when Damon was cruising down the streets of Berkeley, posting to his growing following, all he could think about was how far he'd come since Canyon Burger. He still sent every spare penny he could back home, trying to get his family out of an apartment they never should have been in. And in order to do that, he needed to keep performing. Against Minnesota, Damon opened the afternoon flying downhill and bringing down the back on the first series. Then later in the drive, he came across the field and leveled the quarterback with a hit so hard, even Damon himself was surprised. Cal managed to take a 7-point lead, but that's when the cracks started to show. With Minnesota already across midfield, Damon drifted too far outside, letting the receiver cut right across his face for a long completion. Then, shortly after, he was simply out of position, and the Gophers tied the game right back up. As he hit the sideline, Damon could feel it. He'd been playing on anger instead of discipline, and it was definitely showing. Cal took the lead coming out of the break, and Damon was doing his best to stay locked in, but that's when a new problem introduced itself. Minnesota's running back, Tyreek Ballard, was making him look silly. Every time Damon stepped up for the tackle, one swift cut from Ballard left him face down on the turf. At the goal line, Damon filled the gap and kept him out of the end zone, but Ballard came right back on the very next play, diving across before Damon could get a hand on him. With the game tied at 24 and 3 minutes left, Ballard was consistently getting the better of him. At the goal line, manned up on Ballard, Damon took away the easy dump off and the rush got home, and Damon nearly got his hands on what would have been a game-saving interception, but instead, Minnesota came away with 3. Cal was able to match it with a field goal of their own as time expired, and the game was heading to overtime. Ballard came right back out and punched in another score, and okay, this is getting a little ridiculous now. Cal's offense managed to answer back and keep them alive, and when Damon took the field in double overtime, he was done. Done being embarrassed by a back he hadn't known the name of before today. He read the handoff before the snap, crashed downhill, and took Ballard's legs out from under him for a 1-yard gain. Then, on third down, he was there again for a quick stop on Ballard, forcing Minnesota to settle for 3. Against all odds, after 3 grueling overtimes, Cal escaped Minneapolis with a victory. But despite being 2-1, Damon was far from content. The Singleton situation had been stirring in his chest for weeks now, bleeding into his concentration every Saturday. And now, after that game, his position coach had him staying after practice to work on his tackling. The only thing that hadn't slowed down was the NIL deals. His following kept growing, and so did the offers. New car, new clothes, the latest iPhone, and each time something new came in, Damon made sure to save some of it for his family. During the bye week, he made the drive back to Encino, back to that cramped apartment that his dad definitely would have hated. Not because it was small, but because it wasn't something he built. But when he got there, his mom took one look at everything he brought and shook her head.
This is too much, Damon.
Too much? What are you talking about? It's the least I can do. You deserve it.
Groceries are one thing, baby, but I don't need jewelry or clothes or any of this. When did you start caring about stuff like this? That's not who you are.
Damon didn't have an answer for that. Ever since he was old enough to understand what his mother's life actually was, all he'd wanted to do was give her something back, and here he was, finally able to. And she was standing in a tiny apartment, turning it all away. But Damon wasn't ready to leave just yet. Okay, what about Maya? Does she need anything for school or gymnastics?
Sweetie, we're fine. Mr. Singleton has stopped by a couple times and left some things for Maya. We really should talk about...
Damon cut her off before she could finish. He could feel his anger rising, but he refused to let his family see it. He said goodbye to Maya, kept his thoughts to himself, and cut the visit short. And even in his new car, the drive back to Berkeley was a long one. The following week, taking on Wake Forest, Damon was on autopilot for all 4 quarters. His mom's words ran on a loop inside his head. Singleton dropping off things for Maya, his mom turning down his money, but apparently not Singleton's. The same man who took the house he'd worked all year to save was now playing the generous benefactor to his family, and somehow that was supposed to be fine with him. He kept everything bottled up, just played, and the Golden Bears lost. That weekend, when he'd normally be in the film room, Damon didn't go, and when a classmate mentioned something about a party, Damon didn't even let him finish. He was there. And honestly, it felt pretty good. For a few hours, he had no responsibilities bearing down on him. No Singleton, no NIL deadline, and no film to study. Just a room full of people who had no idea about any of it. But what Damon didn't know is that he probably should never have gone. Because taking the field against Duke the next afternoon, his coach pulled him aside. Someone had snapped a photo of him at the party, and it had made its way back to the coaching staff. And at a program like Cal, breaking curfew had consequences. So for the entire first quarter, Damon watched from the sidelines. And he had a pretty good idea of who sent that photo. Kamani Hudson, a teammate who'd been at that party too, one he thought was his friend. By the time Damon got on the field in the second quarter, he was carrying all sorts of frustration, and he had only one place to channel it. On the opening snap, he flew downhill and laid the back out, then came right back and blasted the quarterback, knocking the ball free. For the rest of the afternoon, he threw his body into every collision. Technique went out the window, and every hit was just reckless abandonment. But it didn't matter. The Golden Bear offense did their best Golden Eagle impression and put up only 7 points. Another home loss and another sad locker room. At 2-2, the season wasn't completely lost, but with every passing week, the mountain was only getting steeper. Taking the field against 5-1, 25th ranked Georgia Tech, Damon understood what this game meant, not just for the team, but for himself. He'd spent nearly all of freshman year trying to will a losing program into relevancy. If the NIL deals were going to keep coming, Cal needed wins, and Damon needed to be the reason for them. On the opening drive, he got his chance. He played underneath, read the quarterback's eyes, baited the throw perfectly, and then, for a half second, his mind went somewhere else.
When did you start caring about stuff like this? That's not who you are.
The ball hit his hands and bounced away. The freest interception he'd ever been given. It was practically gift wrapped to him, and he let it go. Georgia Tech finished the drive with a touchdown, and once Damon hit the sideline, his coach didn't hold back. The offense went 3 and out, and Georgia Tech was showing everyone there are genuinely levels to this game, punching in another score almost effortlessly. But Damon refused to let his unit fold. He generated stops, forced punt after punt, keeping Cal in the game for as long as he could, but it didn't matter. The offense just couldn't be bothered to put up so much as a field goal, and by the final whistle, Georgia Tech walked away with the win. This one stung differently, because for the first time all season, Damon felt like there was genuine blame to go around. His own distraction, his own drops, his own lack of focus. He knew it, but he just couldn't bring himself to admit it. It was much easier to aim the blame somewhere else. When reporters approached him after the game, he didn't mince words. His answers were short and pointed, the kind that would definitely rub the coaching staff the wrong way once they'd heard them. That night, a few teammates knocked on his door, talking about a team movie night or something. It was well-meaning and just a way to keep the locker room together amidst a tough stretch of games. But Damon looked at them square in the eye and said, "Why would you think I'd want to spend time with you? We're teammates, not buddies." The faces in the hallway turned to disgust as he shut the door. Damon had become the guy nobody wanted to be around, the guy who made an already losing locker room unbearable. And somewhere underneath everything, he could feel it. He knew exactly what he was doing and who he was becoming, he just didn't know how to stop it. The following week, when the team traveled to take on the Hokies, Damon felt uneasy. It was the most isolated he'd ever felt on a football field, surrounded by teammates who'd stopped caring about him. And he had nobody to blame for that but himself. But despite that, Damon and the defense had shown up to play, and by the end of the first half, they'd held Virginia Tech to just 13 points, while the offense spent the entire half sputtering and stalling on every drive. Damon watched his quarterback take the verbal lashing from the coaching staff, knowing full well what it felt like to stand there and take it. So for once, he kept his opinions to himself. With the third quarter winding down and the Hokies backed up on their own 1-yard line, Damon sensed the handoff before the ball was even snapped. He timed it perfectly, dove into the backfield, and wrapped up the back before he could take a single step. A massive play that actually earned him some love from coaches and teammates. He'd almost forgotten what that felt like. The offense managed to get on the board late, but it just wasn't enough. Cal lost another game, and Damon's frustration only continued to build. Another strong defensive performance buried by yet another ugly loss. Over the last 2 years, whenever Damon needed to vent about football, talk about classes, or really just get anything off his chest, he'd always been able to call home to his mom. She was the one constant that never changed. So after the Virginia Tech loss, he did exactly that. Only this time, a few minutes into the conversation, he heard something in the background that made his stomach drop.
"Maya, come check out what I brought."
Mom, is that him?
D, he just stopped by to drop something off for Maya.
Damon immediately hung up, not caring to hear whatever excuse his mother had. Against Syracuse the following week, every bit of that anger made its way onto the field. He opened the afternoon, flying downhill, chopping the receiver's legs out from under him on the first series. Then, late in the game, with Syracuse threatening to put it away, he snagged a touchdown-saving interception in the end zone. Damon spent the entire afternoon seeing red, which made it that much worse when the Orange came out with a win. He didn't stick around for the locker room speech. He went straight to his car and set his course for Encino. It was time to take care of something long overdue. As he pulled into the driveway of his old home, the last time he'd been there flashed in his mind. He pounded on the door, watched a light flip on inside, and the door swing open.
Damon? What are you doing here? It's the middle of the night.
What's it gonna take? You already took our house and now you want to hang around my family and play provider? That's not your job. So tell me, what's it gonna take for you to give us our house back and get out of our lives? Damon stood there, breathing heavy, watching Singleton's expression shift.
I don't want your money, Damon.
Right, you just want to steal my house. Singleton's tone snapped.
I saved your house.
Those words hit Damon hard, and for a moment, the two just stared at one another.
I spent all year watching you, every game, every week, doing the math alongside you. And when I knew you weren't going to make it in time, I called the bank. I didn't think past that moment. I just knew this house couldn't go to a stranger.
Damon's expression shifted, still angry, but now with a subtle confusion underneath.
I reached out to your mom right away. I told her the house was hers and that she could move back in whenever she was ready. But she said no, because of you. She didn't want you feeling like you owed me anything. She asked me to give her time, so I did.
Damon didn't say anything. Every word he'd rehearsed on the drive down here suddenly didn't fit anymore. Why are you living here then? If the house was always ours, why are you still here?
Because your mother asked me to stick around until things got sorted, and because I didn't have anywhere else to be. The house is yours, Damon. It always was.
Damon stood there for a moment, his mind racing to process everything. Everything he'd thought since transferring, he'd been wrong about. But he didn't forgive Singleton, he didn't say thank you, and he didn't apologize. He just nodded once at his former coach, walked back to his car, and drove away. By the time Damon got back to Berkeley, everything felt smaller. The house situation was never what he thought it was. Singleton was never who he thought he was, and the hellbent mission he'd spent all sophomore year running suddenly felt like it never mattered. The only thing that still made sense was football. Against SMU the following week, Damon played on another level. When the Mustangs reached the goal line, he stepped up in the gap, won the one-on-one, and shoved the back backwards to keep him out of the end zone. And on the very next play, he shot the gap again for another TFL. SMU had to come out and empty just to split Damon out wide and get him out of the box, and only then were they able to finally punch in a score. He came back on the next series, kept his depth, and helped break up a third down pass to force the punt. With all the uncertainty in his life, it felt good just to step outside of his own head and do what he did best. And for once, the offense showed up too. Cal put up points, the defense kept holding, and everything was going well. Until after generating a turnover, the defense hit the sideline and Damon got singled out. For what exactly? Who knows? Of course, it wouldn't be a Cal football game without some chaos. SMU kept pace all afternoon, and when the game slipped into overtime, Damon covered his zone perfectly, only for the Mustangs to go to the opposite side of the field for the score. When the offense got their chance to keep the game alive, a free rusher came screaming through untouched, buried the quarterback, and scooped the fumble all the way to the house. It didn't matter how well Damon played, he couldn't single-handedly change the outcome of games the way he used to back in high school. That was just the reality of it now. That night, sitting in his dorm, trying to shake off yet another loss, there was a knock at his door. He had no idea who it could even be. He'd burned just about every bridge at this school. And when he swung the door open, there he was. Kamani Hudson. Damon's expression turned sour, and as he sat there looking at him, he could tell this wasn't a planned visit. Kamani told him his girlfriend had broken up with him, and his reputation as the guy who rats out his teammates had left him with literally nobody else to turn to. Damon paused for a moment. He didn't shut the door in Kamani's face, and he didn't DM his ex-girlfriend, even though he probably could have. Instead, he opened the door and let him in. He canceled the NIL shoot he had in the morning, ordered food, and spent the entire night trying to console a teammate who maybe didn't even deserve it. It was just the right thing to do. The following week, the team traveled to take on NC State, and right before kickoff, Damon's phone buzzed. It was a text from Coach Singleton. Damon read it, but didn't answer. He wasn't ready to pretend everything was back to normal just yet. And let's set the record straight for a moment. Cal was 2-7 and 0-6 in the conference. Not exactly the sophomore season anyone had envisioned. But despite everything, the losses, the situation with with Coach Singleton, the NIL chaos, Damon's mission hadn't changed. He was still trying to build that generational wealth, and he needed every deal he could get along the way. Cal desperately needed a lifeline. The program's morale was hanging on by a thread. But when NC State opened with an 80-yard touchdown on a busted coverage, the air was sucked out of every Golden Bear on the sideline. The offense failed to respond, and things were looking especially bleak. Then something shifted. Damon flowed in coverage, read the quarterback's eyes the whole way, and picked the ball right out of the air effortlessly. And maybe he was imagining it, but Damon could swear he heard small cheers coming down from the NC State stands. For the rest of the afternoon, something about this place felt like it had possessed him, and he couldn't quite figure out what it was. For just today, it felt like his body was whole again, moving perfectly without any limitations. He anticipated everything, blew up plays before anyone else could react, and gave the offense the chances they needed to get back in the game. Cal took the lead on a field goal late, and the defense shut the door with a 4th down stop. When the final whistle blew, Damon stood on the field while his teammates celebrated around him. He just played the kind of game he didn't think he was capable of anymore, and he couldn't explain why. With only a few weeks left in the season, Cal was looking to close things out on an upswing. So ahead of their matchup with Stanford, the team was called together for a guest speaker the coaching staff had brought in. Murmurs of who it could possibly be circulated around the locker room, but when the door opened, every whisper stopped. Marcus Knox, the football legend, was standing at the front of the room. He spoke to the team about crossing the finish line, despite how challenging the season had been. And as he spoke, every player in the room hung on to his every word. And when the meeting wrapped and the team filed out, Marcus caught Damon before he reached the door. "You're Wade, right?" Damon was almost too starstruck to answer. "Yeah, I am. I've heard a lot of good things about you. Coach Singleton literally can't stop talking. He told me I had to come see you in person." Damon finally found his voice. "Singleton told you that?" "Among other things, yeah. Look, I don't know the full story between you two, but take it from someone who spent most of their college career chasing the whole vengeance thing. It doesn't really help in the end. It actually almost cost me the most important relationship in my life." Marcus stood there for a moment, like he was reminiscing about something painful. "But that's not why I'm here. Look, you've got natural instinct. Your technical skills are clean, and there's a lot there to work with. Singleton also told me about you wanting to give back to your family, and I respect the hell out of that." Damon didn't say anything. He didn't know how to feel about Singleton sharing his story with someone like Marcus Knox. "So here's what I'm prepared to offer you. A shot at my organization. We take young players, like you, polish them up, and help them to open doors you wouldn't expect. Show me something good these last couple of weeks, and I might just have a spot for you." Marcus's eyes narrowed. "And if you really impress me, I'll get you in touch with my guys over at Bama. Over there, the NIL potential is life-changing." He gave Damon a firm handshake, patted him on the shoulder, and left the room. Everything Damon had wanted since the first time he ever picked up a football was suddenly right there in front of him. Taking the field against Stanford, Damon played like he had something to prove, because he actually did. The discipline he'd spent the whole season building came naturally now. Pair that with his instincts that had always been there, and he was playing some of the cleanest football of his sophomore year. His best play came in the 3rd quarter. Stanford pulled out a reverse that fooled everyone on the Cal defense. Everyone except Damon. He flew to the football and cut the back down perfectly for a tackle for loss. On the next series, he filled the gap and blasted the ball carrier for a 1-yard gain. Then on 4th and inches, he timed the snap perfectly, flew into the backfield, and blew up the handoff for another turnover on downs. The Cal sideline erupted. Teammates smacked his helmet, and even his coach was showing him some love. Stanford came away with a win in the end, but for once, the scoreboard wasn't the thing Damon was thinking about as he left the field. For a good bit of the afternoon, he'd forgotten that Marcus Knox was even watching. He'd forgotten about NIL, Alabama, all of it. He just played football. And for the first time in forever, his teammates actually invited him out after the game. That week, he picked up his phone and finally sent a message to the man he'd been avoiding for months. With exactly 1 game left, Damon thought about everything sophomore year had thrown at him. The transfer, the UCLA game, the highs, the lows, the house, all of it. But now was no time to get distracted, because Cal's final opponent was no pushover. 17th ranked Miami. When Cal came out and generated back-to-back stops to open the game, it looked like they really could do this. With the first quarter expiring and the score still knotted at 0, Damon sniffed out the quick pass on 3rd down and blew up the receiver to force another punt. Cal took the lead with a touchdown, and the defense answered immediately with an interception. It wasn't Damon's, but he didn't care. He was just glad to see his unit playing the way he always knew they could. Cal jumped out to a 14-0 lead, but Miami was a different animal entirely. They got on the board and started moving through the Golden Bear defense with ease. Backed up to their own end zone, Damon's instincts took over. He saw the RPO developing, attacked the receiver, and held them to a 1-yard pickup. But Miami came right back with a corner of the end zone dime for the score. Damon could feel the game starting to shift, and for a split second, he thought he'd woken up a sleeping giant. But the team rallied. The offense put up 3 to extend the lead, and the rest of the defense stepped up alongside him. Miami answered again on a long strike over the middle, and then lined up for 2. The quarterback floated one Damon's direction, and 1/2 second of hesitation was all it took. Miami tied the game, and Damon stood there knowing exactly what he had just done. Then, the offense he'd spent all year criticizing took the field with the game on the line. They moved down the field against one of the best defenses in the country and booted a field goal through as time expired. Cal had pulled off the upset. Watching his team storm the field, Damon felt something stirring inside him that he hadn't felt in a long time, maybe ever. It wasn't about NIL money or proving something to someone who'd wronged him. In that moment, he was just Damon Wade, the football player. With sophomore year officially behind him, Damon truly didn't know where junior year would take him, and he didn't have to wait long to find out what was on the table. Marcus Knox reached out shortly after the Miami game with an official offer, a spot in his organization, and if Damon wanted it, a place on the Alabama roster for junior year. The NIL potential alone was everything he'd been chasing since high school. And then there was a voicemail from Coach Singleton.
Damon, I know this year has been rough, and I'm sorry for my part in it. Your mom and Maya have already moved back into the house, and now I want to ask you one thing. Come play for me at UCLA. Let's finish what we started. You don't have to answer me right now. Take some time to think about it.
Damon had two real offers on the table. Join one of the best organizations in college athletics, play for a powerhouse program, and secure the future he'd always pictured for himself. Or reunite with a man who'd believed in him when nobody else did and try to finish something that had barely been started. But before he could make any decisions, he had to get through the rest of the semester first. Finals, packing up his dorm, and just closing out the school year. He was crossing campus when a man came jogging toward him from across the quad.
Hey, Damon, hold on a second.
Damon stopped and stared at him, trying to place the man's face.
Phew, glad I caught you. I'm Coach Loggins, NC State.
Damon stood there confused. What was a coach from North Carolina doing in Berkeley? The man extended a slightly sweaty handshake before Damon could ask.
Boy, the way you lit us up this year was something to see.
Thanks. Coach, what are you doing here?
Right, yeah. I'm here because I wanted to know if you had any intention of transferring for next year.
Damon just looked at him for a second. You came all the way out here to ask me that. You know, that probably could have just been a phone call.
Well, yes, you're right, but I also have something for you.
He reached into his jacket and pulled out an old, slightly blurry photograph.
Man, your dad was a beast for our program back in the 90s. I figured you might want to see this.
Damon's hands tightened around the picture. My dad?
Oh yeah, Wolfpack legend. A lot of guys around the program still talk about him. Anyway, I think you'd love NC State. The campus is great. The team is in a good position.
Damon barely heard the rest of what Coach had to say. He was looking at the photo. A team picture, two players standing shoulder to shoulder like they'd been buddies for years. His father, about his age, in full uniform, smiling at the camera like he had no idea what the future would hold. And standing next to him, someone Damon recognized immediately. Hey, who's this? Next to him. The coach leaned over and squinted at the photo.
Let's see. Pretty sure that's a receiver we had around the same time. Singleton something.
It felt like Damon's world had completely stopped. He stood there on the sidewalk holding a photograph of his father and Coach Singleton standing together like old friends, while this coach kept talking about what a great fit the Wolfpack would be for his junior year. His father had played college ball at NC State alongside Coach Singleton, and nobody, not his mother, not Singleton, had ever said a word. Coach Loggins shook his hand one more time, turned and walked away, completely unaware of how he just turned Damon's world upside down. Damon looked back down at the photo for a long time. Junior year was right around the corner, and with it, an impossible choice to make.